Welcome, everybody, to another episode of our podcast, Transformation Leadership. And today we're talking about a common transformation concept. One of the things that a lot of people out there are doing are using their web presence to drive more market share. And with the marketing of that, you have to understand it all comes down to understanding where the investments are coming from. If you pay money on Google Ads, if you run promotions, as that is running through and being processed, you need to codify these things. And hopefully everybody kind of understands this concept. But today, we really want to use this as an example to talk about the process. So, David, let's start there. What are good reasons to revisit the way that they are doing marketing, tracking, and analytics?
Yeah, so really it comes down to there's a lot of choices out there. This is one open source software choice for you. But at the end of the day, transformation is about first knowing where you've been, where you want to go, and how am I going to get there? And so in today's day and age, there's not a shortage of paths to potentially go. So what we want to do really is kind of outline and highlight for you within the show what exactly are your options. So first, I want you to let me kind of set the stage about kind of a typical day in the life. Now, some of you may be doing this already. Some of you may be doing pieces of it. Some of you may not be doing anything with it. But nonetheless, the biggest bang for your buck is going to be whatever dollars you're investing in LinkedIn or social media or whatever it is that you're doing. They provide tools maybe within and of itself, and that's all well and good. But how do you centrally manage all of your assets in a single place? And that's really kind of the key takeaway. And answering Sean's question that he had originally asked me as, kind of where's this going to go and kind of what's the benefit? And so if you use these tools in LinkedIn or use these tools on YouTube, you're going to have the separation of information spread everywhere. And so there's a couple of tools that are available to you. This is, again, an open source one, 100% free. With all of that comes a little bit of complexity, but we'll get into that in a minute. But let's look at some of the most common ones out there. This is Bitly, varying prices a month, as you can see. And if you switch between pay annually or pay monthly, this thing can get pretty expensive. This one's probably $2,500, $2,400 a month plus. And it gives you a central location, but what do you get for that? So this one allows you to generate 5 links a month. Okay, for free, I can kind of get that. But again, the open source options are unlimited. And so when you look at this, it just continues to go, but there's restrictions at every level. Here's another one, Short.io. And then they do their pricing and what they give away at different areas. But here's the thing, you get link automation, branded links, tying it to custom domains, redirects, track clicks, conversions, things of that nature, right? And so this is what you're paying for, all of these features. And so you'll need to just shop around and see which one's right for you. This one does pricing a little differently. They limit the amount of engagement clicks that you get for free, and then they start doing tiers. And as you move through the tiers, it has a different cost. So if your marketing is extremely well and you're simply just looking for tracking, this might get quite expensive for you, especially if you have a very large global audience and engagement. So be careful with those. Here's some that are free. And if you look at the domain name that it is generating, I don't know about those of you, but I'll put you on the spot, Sean. Do you know what GY is? .gy? What domain? We got
No.
you, got whatever. Well, it's actually a country, and it's in South America, and it's Guyana. So when you sign up for this, even though it's run by a very popular service, another one, which I haven't pulled up, called Rebrandly, it's like Bitly and the rest of them. This is a free service. Register here. Now, I don't know if your data lives here or not, but if it does, what are some of the ramifications of having your data out of the US?
Yeah. I mean, hey, I got to kind of stop you there, David, because what I'm seeing here is a typical problem you're going to have on digital transformation is you have a current state and then you have a plethora of options on a possible next state. And those options have a varying degree of requirements. So it sounds like to me, when you go shopping, creating a matrix of what you can transform into is incredibly important, comparing it to what you're doing now. I mean, wouldn't that be the first step? Or actually, I think the first step would be, why do you have a problem to begin with? What's the problem statement with your current solution if you have one? And then creating a matrix and understanding the comparison between them.
Yeah. And the other thing people don't think about too is even if they're tracking the links, they don't put data, what we'll call metadata, into these links. Let's just use an example. Let's pull up a new tab here and let me go to foo.com. So it's not an interesting website. It's a fictitious, stupid placeholder website. But nonetheless, if this is retail or something that's there, simply going to foo.com and tracking how many clicks to foo.com is all well and good. But what does that mean? Well, there's this tool that is out there. This isn't unique to Shortify the API. There's a plethora. Even Google Analytics has a free builder. But nonetheless, UTM, I don't remember the full, but it's like Urchin Tracking Module or something to that effect. It was essentially purchased and bought out by Google. And then, of course, all of this ties into Google Analytics. So if you start here with your, https:// if I could type, and then foo.com, right? That's the beginning. But then what is the rest of this information that's here? And so a source. So this one, say, for example, is chatbot. I don't know. Here's a serialized number of what this chatbot might mean to something internally that I have looked up, but it's the source of where somebody is clicking on this foo.com link. And what is the medium for that? Okay. Oh, it's a chatbot. It's a flow redirect. And what might be happening within that chatbot? Well, maybe we're discussing, or there's a trigger for a summer sale. And you get content, and the summer sale is about a camping tent. So it's very specific. We know that somebody was chatting with a chatbot at this particular place. The chatbot did a flow redirect to foo.com. We know that they were talking about a summer sale having to do with a tent. And the point here is you can go on and on within the confines of what is an Urchin tracking module or a UTM. And so you generate this code and it's disgustingly ugly. And it's like, oh, mamma mia. How, like if you put that in an email and you don't put it as a link behind and you embed it, it's going to make your email extremely complicated, hard to read. It's not very good.
And sketchy.
Yeah, and sketchy. And, this is where some of these, URL shortenings come in. And now this is on Shortify API, and I'm hosting it here. But I could have called this foo.com, and we could have this service behind foo.com at app.foo.com as opposed to www, right? And so I think you get the point. But the URL is not sketchy. You own it. You put it on your company's brand behind your company domain. And that is super, super important because that call out that Sean just said is extremely important. Let me jump you into the user front end because an API is ugly. It doesn't mean anything to the average person unless you're, of course, a little geeky like me. It means something. And don't worry, I got something for you guys as well. We'll show it if you're watching at that level. But for those that are in the marketing department, all they want to do is just say, hey, I need to create a tracking link. And so I'll just call this test and I'll paste in, or try to paste in this very ugly link. And so here's this disgusting link. And now I have created a short link. And so again, I want you to replace shortify.api.com with your company, foo.com, if you own Foo, right? And so, you can scan the QR code if you want to. Like you can grab your phone right now, go into the Picture app, scan the QR code, and it's going to hyperlink you to this. And then that link is going to take and boom, redirect you out to foo.com. But more importantly, behind the software, if you go and we go get the short links, we see this ugly link, we have a number 1. And if I click on that link again, it'll go to 2 and 3 and 4, and it'll just keep incrementing. And so that's where you want to put this stuff on a dashboard. There's open source software that's available from Google. It's called, what is it? I think it's called Looker Studio. And if you've used Power BI or Tableau, it's just like that. It's a visualization tool. And you just run it against this API to get your information. And so you can come back here, get all the redirect logs. And of course, there's not much there. Well, yeah, there's an error that I have. I'll have to fix that later. But nonetheless, you can get the logs that are behind the scenes. And lo and behold, you'll be able to put that and populate it onto a dashboard that's there. So, Sean, what are some other interesting points or takeaways that you can think of that companies should be, considering or thinking about? If I'm spending a lot of money, how can stuff like this really help justify the spend?
Yeah. Now, we talked about starting with a problem statement, and maybe the problem statement is you're not getting the data you want, or the data is not clear enough, right? But that will certainly focus what's important. And then you need to be able to compare and contrast how things are doing and be able to model the costing, because it's going to be different from ever. So again, you need to add data to that, right? Data is your friend in a digital transformation, because you get a get out of jail free card because the data points one way. Look, data is better than a hunch, right? So, you could be fired on a wrong hunch. You can defend yourself if it's bad data. So getting data and using data to be able to point you the way from a good decision is important.
Yeah.
But as you're seeing right now, and a lot of things that you're showing, David, is great. But remember, this is manual. You may have all kinds of automation capabilities that you need to be able to support too. So, you need to look at your integration stack. If this other product may be better from a data perspective, or better from an better from a analytics perspective, but you're going to have to pay through the arm for integration costs, right? So it's best to think holistically. And again, this is a lot of the times, David, you and me do this all the time for our client, is you've got to think the whole life cycle. Remember, when you're talking about marketing, you're just not going to market once. It's a life cycle. It's not a task, it's a life cycle. So if you're selecting a tool for a task, you do it once, you get it done, it becomes a past really, really quickly. And, honestly, who cares about the past, right? The past is only valuable when looking into the future. So, if you are doing a single task, it may not be that important. But for this kind of use case, this is something that you're marrying to. And, you may want to date a couple of people before you pop the question. And so that's what a lot of the work that we do as a company is help clients navigate that. So what I try to remind people is think of long-term. Think next year, 3 years, 5 years out. Is this going to be something worth your time? And then calculate what the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year cost is, compare it to doing nothing. And that will give you a good idea of, is this even a problem worth solving? And you'd be stunned how many times clients find out really quickly that there's just no money or value or productivity gains in solving this problem. They're bigger fish to fry.
Yep. Definitely well said. And to your point, the Open API is just that. It's an API. Now, I don't have an endpoint established here yet to be able to run the example because I had forgotten it. I had taken it down. If we had time permitting, there's this host called Render that you can deploy it to, and it takes about 3 to 5 minutes to run the stack. And then, of course, I can run the API. But to your point, though, Sean, is part of this API or open source project is this Postman part that you can use for integration. And so, hyper automation is all the rage these days. And then hyper automation with the addition of AI that Sean and I love to talk about. And so you add all of these components in with this problem statement and add some automation, add some API integration, and now a lot of this stuff can be automated. And so if you looked at the price matrix or think back to the pricing matrix there, a lot of those do not have API offerings at all. Some of them do, but not every one of them. And so as a result of that, the biggest bang for your buck. But whether you're paying for it and you're okay with it, the main takeaway, especially the theme of our podcast, is transformation leaders. And we're trying to point you in a right direction, get you to think in the right way about something holistically from the point of view that you're going to get the biggest ROI or you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And so a lot of days, or especially nowadays, I should say that everybody is looking to capitalize on their spend. Money's tight, and companies are, they're laying off in droves, and a lot of them, especially in the technology sector, are going to be using AI for a lot of this. And so AI was written, this open source project is half of it was written in AI. Like, I didn't write a lick of code for it. And so AI went in there and created a lot of this for that. So it's really a testament to getting the biggest bang for your buck, making sure you're using AI to create these types of tools. Even though this is open source and no cost to you, you don't have to use this. You could use AI just like I did to create these software products for you. And this is exactly what Sean and I do every day, is work with technology, work with companies, talk to them how to implement whatever it is that they're trying to do. And AI is very centric to what Sean and I both do in our day jobs, besides doing podcasts. And so we would absolutely love to talk to you about that. But if you have seen any of the other podcasts, to go to LinkedIn and hit us up there. So obviously, please ask any questions that you might have within this podcast as well. Sean, what are some of the other marketing benefits that you can think of? And I've seeded that question a little bit here in some of this marketing, but what am I missing? Like, what is some of the bigger picture ideas there?
Yeah, I mean, for me, marketing is all about fixating on communications. It is creating a narrative and keeping the narrative, and then analyzing the narrative. And the only way marketing is good is if the narrative works. And the only way to tell if the narrative works, especially for digital marketing, is through this capability. So data is the most important thing. It says comprehensive analytics, but the most important thing is actually getting good quality data. And certainly analytics, it gives you a way to view that data, but you can take the data and move it anywhere you want. That is something that is extensible. I'm a big believer in open source for a couple reasons. One is that open source really allows you to understand what you're getting. You could look at a code. You could understand the code. You could bring somebody in and get a good handle on what it's doing if you are worried. Because especially like in EMEA with GPDR, you need to know these things, right?
Yeah.
So it's important for that. And then the other part of open source that I really like is that it is the most common functionality. So a lot of times we all have blind spots, and the community will tell you what is common. Now, a lot of people get into their own head a lot and say, well, I want what I want and I want it. So, but you have that customization capability too. So it kind of helps you keep honest with open source. The problem with open source is the maintainability. And you got to have to pay somebody either on your team or another team to make sure they're around when you have a question or you have a problem. So whether it be open source or closed source, you're still going to end up paying money. It's just who you're going to pay to, an SI or an internal resource or a software company. Either way, you're going to pay. So I don't. A lot of people say open source is when you want to be cheap. No, if you're not paying for maintenance, if you're not paying for somebody to answer your questions, you're setting yourself up for failure. But again, that's what I would say top of mind is a lot of people in digital marketing, they don't understand the technology bits. So going with a provider makes the most amount of sense. This is why SaaS has been such a huge movement in the last 10 years in our industry, is that you don't have to be an expert in the ones and zeros. You could just consume the outcome. And to move fast and break stuff, which is what a lot of people like to do in the tech community, that's usually the best solution. But again, understanding your problem statement, doing a matrix, coming up with what is your 1, 3, and 5 year outlook on costs, what are your risks, and then really getting down into understanding of the actual value. If you solve this problem, what is its costs? What are the value? Do the math, and then propose this to the budget keepers. And usually you can look at it and see whether or not a budget keeper will allow you to make a change. But again, Shortify is a great example of there are plenty of things out there beyond just the top 3 paid for links on Google Ads, right? So, when people usually do these things, they go to Google and search digital marketing embedding, and then they pick the top 3 paid ads, and that's what they do their research on. You could very well miss out on a much better solution if you do that.
Here's another open source one right here. Haven't even checked this one out, but the point is there are a lot of that's out here, and this looks like it's not even. Hey, this actually is a good link here. So if you're looking to pay or you're looking for free outsource, it looks like this Git repository, somebody has gone and done all the research about what services are available out there for you for pay and for free. And then it tells you which ones are depreciated. Now, I don't know how current this list is, but to Sean's point is, Shortify API, again, open source project. You don't need to use it, but this is a really, really good link here. So I will go ahead on everywhere where this broadcast is out, and I'll try to make a comment and put this URL link so that everybody can have access to this list. Again, looks like both paid and open source free. So I think that will get everybody on at least the right page on where to go. And next week, we'll be talking about orchestration agents and all kinds of wonderful stuff. So going to jump back into AI and get into the thick of it. But this is just a piece, a task, and a much bigger task. And all of these shows are really about cogs on the wheel that have to do with transformation and how to digitally move you into the modern future state.
Yeah. I mean, I like AI as a technology, but I think today's podcast really talks about what are the nuts and bolts of making a change. And here's really good examples of that. of the type of work that you're going to have to do to accomplish the outcome, which is putting together a presentation asking for money. Because unfortunately, in this day and age, very few of us get the opportunity to do a transformation project without asking for money to do it. And, doing it in a very professional way with all the check marks done makes it a lot easier when things go wrong. And I mean, I don't know, I think it was like a decade ago, I saw that 30% of digital transformation projects fail. 30%. Now, I remember in, 2022? No, 2023, 94% of generative AI projects failed in 2023. So, you need to prepare for failure as well as success. And that's where data is your friend, because data told you to do it, not your personal desires. And you'll be surprised on how much that will help you defend yourself.
That is very, very true. Well, I think that the next thing that people need to do, if they have any questions, again, reach out to us. I'm going to try to put a QR code on the screen here. We'll see how that goes. This is our QR code link. If you want to hit us up directly on LinkedIn, it's our Transformation Leaders Podcast group on LinkedIn. So go ahead and scan that code. I don't know if maybe we can move ourselves around. Yeah, unfortunately, it's behind here. So in any event, pause the screen, get your phone, you can go ahead and grab that link right there. Yep. Or go to transformationleaderspodcast.com. There's our website, and you can hit us up there. But that's it for today's show. And we'll see you next week, every Wednesday at 12 o'clock noon, albeit today was a rare exception. We were a little bit late because it's a scheduling conflict, a lot of things coming back in activity.
Hey, clients always come first, right, David?
That is true. That is true. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.